Start now at 10:40. So today we have just wait for recording. Okay. Start already, right? Hi. Okay, I'll start over. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our parallel session on the theme Digital Technology in Education. Okay, my name is Bibiana, and I'll be the chair for this parallel session in the morning. And I'm assisted by Dr. Ki Yanping, who is helping me to moderate the session. Yeah, I think. All right. And today we have the privilege to have three presenters who is going to present their title and their papers and also posters and presentation. And before we start, just allow me to introduce a couple of things for this virtual conference. Number one, the presentation will take about 20 minutes with Q&A of 8 minutes later on, following that. And if you have any questions, especially from the online participants, you can always put it in the chat room, or you can, during the Q&A, you can always on your mic and ask questions. So far, we have no person attending this room yet. They might walk in as we have our presentation going on. Okay. So without further ado, please allow me to welcome our first presenter, Ms. Anisha Kaur Sandhu, on her title, Encouraging Interprofessional Collaboration Among Medical and Pharmacy Students Using Digital Learning Technologies. So Ms. Anisha, any time for you to start your presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. Just loading my presentation. Okay, let's just let it open up first. Great, can you see this?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I'll start the time when you start, yeah? Okay.
All right, okay, great. So thank you very much. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Anisha, and I'm going to be presenting today on this talk title, Encouraging Interprofessional Collaboration Among Medical and Pharmacy Students Using Digital Learning Technologies. So in Monash, Malaysia, I'm the Interprofessional Education Lead for the School of Pharmacy, and I'm ably helped by Prof. Sibalal and Prof. Amuda from the School of Medicine, and Dr. Juman from the School of Pharmacy. So let me just give a brief presentation outline on what I'm going to be speaking about today. So first, I'll introduce the concepts of interprofessional collaboration in healthcare. Then I'll go on to talk about what is interprofessional education, IPE, and why it's important. I'll talk about the benefits of IPE, then provide an overview of the online IPE program at Monash, Malaysia. And I'll end off with some experience sharing of what we found from this online IPE program. So to introduce interprofessional collaboration in healthcare, basically what has happened is that to deal with the large volume and complexity of care, healthcare delivery has evolved to become more interconnected. So we find different professions, different disciplines coordinating care together. You know, it could be between doctors, nurses, pharmacists, social workers. So as a simple definition, interprofessional collaboration is the practice of approaching patient care from a team-based perspective. It's a process that includes communication and decision-making, enabling a synergistic influence of grouped knowledge and skills. And according to the World Health Organization, by implementing interprofessional collaboration and learning to work together while respecting one another's perspectives, strengths, we really will find that we can bring together multiple disciplines to work more effectively as a team, and that can actually really help to improve patient outcomes. So there are many benefits to interprofessional collaboration. And this includes an increased emphasis on providing patient-focused care, optimizing quality of care, as well as reducing the cost of care delivery. So here on this slide, you can see that I've listed key elements or traits that one should have when practicing interprofessional collaboration or collaborative practice. So a successful interprofessional curriculum will ensure that students can experience, share, and practice all of these traits with each other. So what is IPE or interprofessional education, and why is it important? So defined interprofessional education is when students from two or more health professions learn together during their professional development with the aim to cultivate collaborative practice in providing patient-centered care. And the whole goal of interprofessional education really is to prepare health professional students with the necessary knowledge, skills, and attitudes for collaborative international practice. Why is it important though? Why is interprofessional education important? So patients have increasingly complex health needs and typically require expertise of more than one healthcare discipline to address health needs comprehensively and holistically. We also find that the delivery of complex care, which was previously in compartmentalized silos, so for example, if a patient came in with a renal problem, a diabetic problem, a osteo problem, you would find that each team would actually just work on their own separate ways on the patient rather than have a discussion and work together. So we found that when healthcare was practiced in this way, and this is what research has found, a patient would be treated in specialized aspects of care, but this would actually really bring about a risk for misunderstandings, for medical errors, and for suboptimal communication between the different disciplines. So to address this, they found that one solution was interprofessional education, and that the reason being that it provides a practical framework for learning and clinical practice that prioritizes patients' needs as well. Some of the key features of interprofessional education or IPE is firstly that it should include clear problem-focused interprofessional communication. It should include embracing relationship building to develop effective interdisciplinary team dynamics. It should also include the role of the understanding. It should also recognize the understanding of one's own profession, the role understanding of one's own profession as well as of other disciplines, and the respective responsibilities as well in the context of delivering patient care. The ultimate goal with everything is to deliver safe, effective, and efficient patient care. As well as on top of that, it really brings about a mutual respect for shared values, skills, knowledge that each discipline lends to the healthcare team. So if you can recall, the key traits that were mentioned in one of the first slides, you'll see that the key features of interprofessional education really addresses the main elements that underpin the concept of collaborative practice as well. Recently, actually, I also attended the FIP Unitwin Western Pacific Region Educational Roadmap Workshop. So the FIP is the International Pharmaceutical Federation, and Unitwin is actually a network consisting of groups of universities in different countries that work together and that have agreed with UNESCO to cooperate in an area that is a priority for the organization. So during that workshop, they actually carried out a SWOT analysis to identify educational priorities within the region. So within our current region, Western Pacific, they found that we really need to develop robust interprofessional education curriculums. And this is a priority for the region because it's also recognized as being among one of the main areas of focus for pharmacy education here. So what are the benefits of interprofessional education? There are many short-term and long-term benefits to implementing this in the context of healthcare in our respective faculties. Firstly, it encourages students to develop the ability to share knowledge and work collaboratively. And as we've come to see, it's really crucial for any graduate that will go on to work in health fields as well. As I mentioned earlier, it helps to remove the compartmentalization of curriculums and of work practices, and it really helps students to develop professional skill competencies. So things like, communication, teamwork, problem solving, reflective practice. This is a large focus recently, especially of global competency, education frameworks, and education policy papers on transforming the global workforce developed by the International Pharmaceutical Federation. IPE or interprofessional education also really gives us an opportunity to discover and integrate new skills and areas of knowledge. And what we found in research as well is that teaching learners to collaborate is gaining recognition as an area of focus in workforce development research. And to achieve this successfully via online learning, it's really encouraged that a concerted effort should be taken to conduct virtual sessions, bringing multiple professions together to build interprofessional communities of learning. So let me provide an overview of IPE in Monash, Malaysia. So IPE or interprofessional education, what we aim to do with this is we really want to encourage students of different disciplines to learn with, from, and about each other. So in Monash University, this actually arose from the collaborative care framework. This was developed by the Faculty of Medicine, Nursing, and Health Sciences, and it encompasses 4 key learning themes. So we have person-centered care, role understanding, interprofessional communication, and collaboration within and across teams. So in Monash University, Malaysia, we've been actually carrying out IPE between our medicine and pharmacy students since 2017. Our IPE workshops actually aim to strengthen ties amongst the second year medicine and pharmacy students at the university. The key learning outcomes include establishing a shared vision of care, analyzing similarities and differences between professional roles in the management of diseases, and communicating with other professions in a respectful, responsive, and responsible manner. So IPE is actually encouraged by the medicine and pharmacy regulatory bodies in Malaysia. And over the last 1.5 years, as we know, we've all been struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we had to really reformat our IPE workshop for digital delivery to allow for online learning between the medicine and pharmacy school students. So these students have now, as we know, been confined and scattered in their homes across the country, and some even internationally as well, because of all the various stages of lockdown and border closures. Now, before we implemented the first IPE workshop in October 2020, our students had already engaged in about 7 months of online learning. So when this workshop was implemented, they were already very well versed with using the different learning technologies. We used the Moodle learning management system. We use the webinar software Zoom. And we also use video recording or sharing platforms like Panopto. So the goal of the IPE workshop is for second year medicine and pharmacy students to collaborate together in a 2-hour workshop involving either a respiratory clinical scenario in semester 1 or a cardiovascular and chronic renal disease scenario in semester 2. And this is usually with the assistance of a facilitator. So these clinical themes actually correspond to the systems that are covered in the second year medicine and pharmacy curricula. And these group activities require collaboration across both disciplines rather than just having the students work with colleagues from their own school. So the online IPE workshop is actually set as generally an online self-directed activity, especially in semester 2. And as I said, it's completed by close to about 300 students. And these are usually divided into smaller interdisciplinary groups of about 12 to 14 students each. Each group will consist of an even mix of about medicine and pharmacy students. So in semester 1, each group is assigned its own facilitator to offer help and guidance if and when necessary, as well as to field queries from students. We assign all groups access to some supervising facilitators who will help to also troubleshoot in any technical difficulties. Usually that job falls onto me. And we will also serve as backup facilitators in the event of unforeseen circumstances and to ensure a uniform learning experience across all groups. In semester 2, we allow the students to work in the same groups so that they actually already know each other, but they'll collaborate more independently. So the number of facilitators is reduced to about 4, about each facilitator being assigned around 4 to 5 groups to guide and to field queries. So each time the students get together in their groups in semester 1 or 2, they'll carry out a simple ice-breaking activity before starting out on workshop activities. So you can see on the you can see on the screen here in the iPad graphic, this is actually what the our IPE page looks like as well. This is how we invite students into the IPE module. So a dedicated, as I said, IPE website is available on our Moodle learning management system, and this is the main hub of communication for our IPE workshop. So we tried our best to create a visually impactful site and to attract students' interest. So we have welcome videos that we've used with the animation software like Powtoon. We've got the Guru Producer e-learning software as well. This was utilized to create a digitally engaging learning experience. We've also got learning modules that we've produced to guide students through the Introduction to Interprofessional Education, the IPE workshop expectations, and throughout the planned workshop activities. I'll just show you again on the slide here. You can see, for example, this is what the workshop outline looks like. We've given timings as well so that the students know exactly how much time to give to each activity when they're working through it together. We've really clearly listed the learning outcomes because we want the students to understand that this isn't meant to be a clinical teaching moment. This is meant to be a workshop where, yes, we do use their clinical concepts as a foundation of creating the activities, but really it's all about them talking to each other and collaborating with each other. So we really listed very clearly that, it's about collaboration, it's about communication, it's about learning roles and responsibilities. So an introductory module contains a voice recorded welcome message and details of workshop activities and expectations, clarification of learning outcomes, as well as an interactive explanation on housekeeping aspects, where it also emphasizes that all activities require collaborative participation. The journey continues with the local clinical case scenario of a patient presenting to a pharmacy, either with an asthma-related problem in semester 1 or a cardiovascular problem in semester 2, which would then lead to subsequent renal complications. To make the experience lively and authentic, there are pre-recorded interactive role plays with conversation screens using Guru Producer. So here you can see an example of how one of the patients is coming into a pharmacy and her name is Amina. And when the students press play, they can actually hear us talking to each other as a normal conversational role play. This is an example of some of the activities that they have to carry out. So we have it all very clearly laid out for them to actually be able to carry it out as a self-directed activity. And the reason why we do this is because we really want to reduce the likelihood of facilitators creating a more didactic learning environment. We really want it to be the students feeling comfortable to just collaborate with one another. So students are challenged with content questions across the activities that require contributions from both the medicine and pharmacy aspects to produce a comprehensive response. An example of the worksheet used is shown in the center image of this slide. And in semester 2, we also start to see some colorful, we can see these colorful images on the slide on the left and right. We also get them to engage actively in tasks where they can work together and produce educational resources like patient information leaflets on renal care, for example, as you can see here, or it could even be posters on like cardiovascular lifestyle prevention measures, as you can see on the right here. And to make things a little bit more fun and competitive and to ensure that students really work together towards achieving a shared goal, we also offer prizes for the best posters, the best leaflets, in terms of content and creativity. So the final section of the IPE workshops is designed to help students understand the roles, responsibilities, and skills of each member in the multidisciplinary healthcare team. Students will then record their responses on a Google Documents worksheet, and then they'll submit that onto Moodle. And after the workshop concludes, generally in semester 1, because each group has their own facilitator, they will discuss and provide feedback in class. But in semester 2, we compile all the feedback, go through all the submissions on Moodle, and then we release Panopto-based feedback videos. We also gather all these resources that the students have created, and we compile them in an online resource gallery on Moodle so that the students can actually learn from each other as well. So in terms of experience sharing, what we found is that, there's been a lot of benefits to carrying out IPA activity online. These 2-hour workshops have been actually seamlessly carried out in the last 2 years with minor technical glitches, close to no conference call dropouts actually. We found that, the internet stability actually held out, which is great. We also found that students were able to adapt to the different learning technologies fairly easily, and they were able to navigate their way through all the different softwares. We found that the learning outcomes of encouraging collaboration were all achieved. And the patient education resources produced, as well as the responses to the clinical questions, were all of excellent quality. We also found that it was really helpful in reinforcing the clinical concepts that they were being taught in their separate curricula in both schools, especially with regards to respiratory and to cardiovascular, as well as renal care. And the process to build these learning materials on the technological platforms was thankfully not actually very time consuming as well. We found as well, more importantly, that it was actually a less resource intensive way of carrying out the IPE. So previously, when we used to carry this out physically, we would need to train close to 2022, even 2024 facilitators. And as we know, in that sense, there's actually a lot of variability as well. And that can really determine the student's experience of the whole workshop. On top of that, we would have to book, I think, close to 15 or 16 rooms on campus. So it was very, very resource intensive. What we found is that with doing it online, we actually have a lot of flexibility. The more students we need, or the more students we have, or the more groups you want to create, we can just create Zoom breakout rooms. We can have one facilitator easily manage 4 or 5 groups, for example. So it's actually it's very nice to have that flexibility in this online medium. So in terms of feedback, the post-workshop feedback survey responses that we would tend to get over the past 3 semesters, so we do the feedback from the students every semester. So we generally tend to get somewhere around 190 responses from both pharmacy and medicine students. And what we found is that they've actually been consistently positive throughout the semesters, with more than 90% of the students that are surveyed each semester finding the IPE workshop to be useful, and that online IPE should be considered as well in the current era of learning. We've also had actually some discussions with other interprofessional education leads in different universities in different countries, and a lot of us feel that actually retaining some aspects of the online nature of IPE is very, very useful. Students find that it also helps sometimes in terms of creating an ease in collaboration, and definitely logistically it's much easier to organize. In terms of qualitative feedback, what we find is that there are so many requests that we're getting from students to actually hold more of such workshops. Some of them request that it should be offered at least twice each semester. At the moment, it's once each semester in their second year. So that's definitely something that we're looking into. Also, really to deal with that goal that I think we have in the Western Pacific region to try and make interprofessional education curriculums more robust and more regular. Students are also interested to have more interdisciplinary role play sessions to improve oral communication skills. So that generally tends to be a bit of a point of concern amongst our students here in the Malaysian cohort as well. They tend to be less confident with their oral communication skills, especially in healthcare. You're dealing with so many different people, so many different backgrounds, so many different qualifications, patients of all walks of life. So you have to get very comfortable in talking and dealing in spontaneous situations. So they really like that opportunity to have more of these role play sessions as well, and more opportunities to interact. We also found that they suggested that we maximize the use of available virtual learning platforms, which could provide a richer learning experience. So here at Monash, we have a software that we've created. It's called My Dispense. And what it really does is that it provides an end-to-end online pharmacy simulation experience for students, where it goes from the first communication that the student has with the patient and the prescriber through to the dispensing of medication and in providing professional advice to a patient. So it's actually all based in a community pharmacy setting, and it really gives students a very safe opportunity to learn how to deal with medication safely, dispense medication safely, and how to interact with the patient and prescriber as well. So they really would like to see us incorporating these platforms more into these sorts of learning experiences. Finally, the students also felt that facilitator involvement was key in ice-breaking sessions, because they feel that it really helps to reduce nervousness and encourage communication. So that's really something that we will also look into working on in the future. So that leads me to my conclusions for this talk. So we learned several lessons through implementing different learning technologies to trying to do IPE online. And one of the first things that we found is that students are really willing to adapt to online learning if they find that we as educators are willing to be more creative and to push the boundaries of education, the offerings that we provide to them. And in a similar vein, I guess, as educators, we really need to embrace the future of the education world. So throughout this BERC conference, throughout the plenaries that we've attended, the keynote speeches that we've heard over the past 2 days, we've heard a lot about things like gamification. Just this morning, we heard a really interesting talk on immersive technology. These are all things that we need to think about, ways that we can actually implement into these sorts of educational offerings. I'm also interested in the potential of, offering interprofessional practice-based experiences. So these are all things that we need to really consider as we look into the future of interprofessional education. Another thing that I'm interested to look at is how we can incorporate more telemedicine aspects, so we can really prepare students for meaningful patient consultations and interprofessional collaborative communications between other healthcare disciplines in the post-pandemic era. And we'd also like to include more layers of animation, I would say, for rather than immersive, but more engaging learning experience for the students, so that we can continue to pique their interest, so more exciting visual interface as well for them as they go through these learning experiences. From a collaboration perspective, to end this talk, we actually received mixed responses regarding our approaches to how we chose to carry out the different facilitation styles, where in semester one, each one had their own facilitator, and in semester two, they were left to be more independent. About 46% of the cohort felt that a facilitator's presence was necessary to encourage the communication, but the rest of the students actually preferred self-directed learning in their own groups. We learned, however, one of the most key important things in encouraging collaboration is that ice breaking. It's amongst the most crucial activities because it really sets the tone for the rest of the workshop and collaborative experience within the student groups, especially in an online setting. So there's a preference for it to be more facilitator-led, and that, it should really be an exciting interactive activity. So that's something that, we'll look into work into in the future semesters of this offering. Previous methods of ice breaking, for example, we would get them to do like one-on-one conversations, introducing each other. Those are less successful in an online setting. So we also found that creating an activity that requires these student groups to come together and to achieve like a shared goal helps to foster stronger collaboration. And it's especially more likely to foster that stronger collaboration and that collaborative work ethic if there's that option of a reward or a prize at the end or some form of recognition. So that's something that we started to implement in semester two. And finally, we learned that to make an online-based IPE program successful, we actually need to give the students more chances, so more multiple varied opportunities to socialize, to mingle, to network. It can't really just be that one workshop per semester or a couple of workshops per semester. We really need to find more methods of engaging the students so that they have a richer higher education learning experience overall. So that really takes me to concluding my talk. Here are some pictures of some happy students. They were not bribed and they genuinely were smiling after the end of their session. And these are the references that I've used for this talk today. And these are my contact details. Should anyone want to connect with me on LinkedIn or to send me an email on my Monash email address. So thank you very much. That's all from me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anisha. So please help me to congrats, Anisha, for a very good, great presentation today. So
Thank
it's
you.
about interpersonal, interprofessional collaboration education. Yeah. So it's something that we are very interested in when we talk about collaborative teams. Having, especially in the context of medical and pharmacy, and I think this topic has been really really comes into well defined in terms of our condition that we have now in terms of COVID, and also the collaboration between a lot of healthcare services to provide the best experience for patients. Yeah. So thank you very much. So at this moment, I would like to open to the floor for any questions that you have for Anisha. Is there any question from the floor or probably in the online as well? Just let me just get the camera focus on our audience here. So you can just lift up your hand and you can just speak up. I think the mic will probably pick up your questions if there's any. At the meantime, I will check on the chat room as well if you have any question. Any question? Okay, I'll probably just start with mine. Very quick one. Sorry, I just tweet the camera to myself first. Okay, right. This interprofessional education is very much focused on professionals like doctors, pharmacists, and healthcare, workers. Probably just list up maybe what are the challenges that you have found, through these workshops, interactions with your students, with the focus of IPE. Is there any challenges that you face during the workshops and pre-workshops or post-workshops? Yeah. Sorry, Anisha, you're on mute.
This is what you call a rookie presenting mistake online. After
Yes.
2 years, I should know about the mute. Well, what I really found, especially over the last 2 years, I'm sorry, is there an echo? You can hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Over the last 2 years, especially, is that, really we're trying to get two different schools to come together who have never met each other, who have never seen each other, who are supposed to try and collaborate with each other. And I think, as we know, with online learning, firstly, number one, my current cohort of second year students have never even stepped foot on campus. So there's that, that added stress. The fact that being undergraduate students, I think they're a lot more nervous when it comes to approaching new different situations. There's also the fact that for a lot of these students that have gone into online learning, they're very used to, in online situations, we tend to be able to kind of like switch off our cameras, put ourselves on mute. We don't necessarily interact as much as we would have potentially in a face-to-face situation. So to bring that together and to get them to really feel comfortable to talk to each other is very, very difficult, actually. It's very challenging. And that's something that I'm still continually trying to find ways to really to really master. So that's really a topic that I tend to approach a lot of other interprofessional education leads about. And yeah, we're continually trialing different ways to find how to get students to engage and interact collaboratively in a more easier way.
Yeah. Thanks, Anisha. Yeah, I think it's not just IPE. I think for any of us educators with tutorial classes, lectures, we all have similar challenges when it
Yeah.
comes online. So, but I really applaud to the Monash team and to you to do something that is outside of what we normally do in tutorials. So you actually did an e-workshop, in my opinion, which is really something that we can learn from. So really thank you for sharing with us on this. And whatever that you have shared with us here are very much beneficial for us. IPE, first time I heard of it, but collaborative teams, yes, I have heard about it, but IPE is really very much niche area for professionals. So, but it's something that we can actually learn from as well. Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
is there any other questions from the floor? Any questions? No? Chat room? No. Okay. Nothing for the chat. So yeah, Anisha, we thank you again. So just stay tuned with us for other presenters. So thank you again, Anisha.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
All right. So thank you for joining us online and also physical, class in this classroom. Sorry. And then, and next we will be moving to Miss Jenny Hu. Okay. Our second presenter today is going to present on trials and errors of Google document as a good tool for homework submission and also feedback, something that is really interesting. Google document is very famously used online tool, but how do we actually make full use of it for homework submission and feedback? I think that is a very interesting topic to look at. So Jenny, 20 minutes presentation, and I'll pass the session to you.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, all right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Is it all good? Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Sorry, I hear echo. Do you hear? Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny, or Tingy. My surname is Hu. I'm a lecturer here at Swinburne University of Technology. Today, my topic is on trials and errors, Google Document as a tool for homework submission and feedback. I'll share a little bit about the research study, so what I'm doing and what prompted the study, where or how did I derive the information from, and some information about homework and feedback, which is the core of this study. And also I'll share some observations about the use of emails, which was the initial tool that I used for homework submission, and then because of some limitations from that, so I turned to the Google document. And before I end my session, I'll talk about some limitations with Google document, and then what further research studies should be done from here on. Just a quick one. This is a very preliminary research study. It's not deep. It's not a very in-depth one. So it's just starting actually. I've not drawn a conclusion yet, so it's all observational at the moment. And further research would definitely need to be done to confirm the observations. Yeah. So why did I start this study? It's really to explore tools for homework submission. So I came across Google document and I thought it was a good one. So I looked at it and then I used it. So I sort of explored it a little bit. Yeah. And also I was looking for digital tools that could help with feedback, which was a challenge when I first started online teaching. So this whole study is really just talking about Google document and also the limitations on email, which Google document helps to overcome. So just a little bit of background. Technology has really become the essential element in education, as we all know, and it's become even more important since 2020 when COVID-19 pandemic happened. Yeah, so all the classes are basically forced to suddenly have to go fully online, which then made technology an even more bigger necessity in teaching. So with the wide arrays of digital tools, I think one question that we all tend to ask is, which ones are the best? Which ones are the most suitable? Which ones should we use? So this is what actually triggered as well my thoughts into looking into this tool. Yeah. So some examples of digital tools that we all are quite familiar with, I think, would be Kahoot, Google Document, Google Slides, MS Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, and a lot more. So today I'm just going to focus on Google Document. So just a little bit about methodology. As I've mentioned, it's a really preliminary one. So it's just really purely based on personal observation and experience as an instructor at this stage. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you later on is really personal observation of the use of Google Document as an instructor and also as a Google app user myself. So it's from the perspective of a user and perspective of an instructor. So because of that, so the findings in my study at this stage is really preliminary. I've not come to a conclusion yet at this stage because I need more research, especially from the students' perspectives. Yeah. So what I'm sharing is going to be from the instructor's perspective. So some background on homework and feedback. So some comments from researchers. So homework, I think all of us know, plays an important role in students' learning, especially underperforming students. They would need more practice, need more feedback to help them improve. I'm teaching language, so this is something that is particularly more important for language learners. Yeah, they need a lot of practices, so homework comes in play. So homework with feedback or comments can improve student performance, especially with open comments. So I read a little bit about feedback, and some of the authors were saying that apparently feedback has got different forms. So it comes in open comments, and you've got marking with no feedback, and you've also got fixed comments. So a lot of times, I think when we use quizzes, especially with the digital tools at the moment, A lot of the comments in quizzes are quite fixed. So when you set the question and then you put in the answer and then the comments, it's done. So you don't change it. So that's what we call fixed comments. Open comments, on the other hand, is a little bit more broader. It's more like comments that we give more on consultation. You know, when you're giving consultation, the comments that you give, they're more alive, where you would give depending on the scenario itself. But with fixed comments, it's more on when we look at students, it's basically delayed comment. Yeah, when students work is done, they submit it, and then we give them a comment later on. So that's more on fixed. Yeah, so there's a little bit about comment there. Now with feedback, it influences a lot on learning, and Wiggins came up with 7 key features, in fact, of effective feedback. But for my study here, because we're looking at Google document, so 2 of the features that I thought were more relevant would be timely and ongoing comment. So these are 2 comments that we usually would have. So timely comment is as soon as possible. So when we give feedback or when students done with their work, it's ideal that we provide the feedback as soon as possible. But I think with online learning, that's a little bit challenging. Yeah, that's something that we face. That is something that's quite difficult to do, especially with online learning, because everything's delayed, even response delayed. A lot of things is one way, so it gets a bit more challenging. The other feature of effective feedback is ongoing feedback. So ongoing meaning in real time. So this would be a little bit more practical if we do it in physical classes. So we see the students straight there and then they do their work. You give a real-time feedback, and then you give them an opportunity to respond and to work on the feedback and to improve. Again, this is something that we probably find a little bit more challenging with online learning. Unfortunately, Google Document can't really solve that, but it can help with some kind of an ongoing feedback. I'll share with you a little bit how that works. So timely feedback definitely would link a lot to do with our load. So I believe every lecturers or every educators would be it's quite impossible, I would think, to give a timely feedback, meaning the moment they're done, you give them a feedback. With online learning especially, that's quite difficult. With physical, as I mentioned, it's very easy because it's in class, you get them to do, you give them 10 minutes to work on it, and then you give the feedback, so that's timely. But a lot of times with assessment related feedback, it's definitely not timely. Yeah. Okay, so the 2 tools or the 2 digital tools that I had on trial were emails and also Google Document. So why email? Okay, so why did I use email to get my students to submit homework? Now, initially when we first came on fully online, this was a big question that I overlooked. Yeah, I'm not sure about a lot of you, but as a you know, when you're in class, this kind of thing you don't have to think about it. When you get the students to do the work, they just submit it in class, you take it and go. But when it's online, you don't have that luxury. You don't see them. So it becomes a problem, and that's what's pretty much it's an issue that I was facing the first semester that we went fully online. When because it didn't cross my mind. So students were asking, how do we submit? And I was stunned because I was thinking, oh no, that's something that is different from physical class. So initially I went with email because it was convenient and it was a tool that we've been using and I'm familiar with it. Well, I took it for granted students were familiar with it actually, and I thought it was user-friendly. So apparently not. So I'll share with you what some of the challenges that I faced with email that didn't cross my mind before the pandemic. So the reason why I chose email was because it was convenient. It was a tool that I've been using a lot for work, so I thought it was easy and user-friendly. And with Google Document, why I eventually went to it was because a lot of the homework that I gave my students were through MS Word document, Microsoft Word document. And I noticed that, or I found that Google Document is basically the Google version of Microsoft Word. And students could just write in it, and they don't have to save it. It's on the drive and it's easy for them to work. So that's one of the reasons why I looked at Google. And it was convenient, and also again I found it was user friendly. So again, these are all perspectives from myself as an instructor before before I got the feedback from students or comments from students when we were using these tools. So some of the just a background a little bit on this, about the students. So the students that I was dealing with mainly are foundation students, so they are fresh high school graduates, and so the email and the Google document were used in online learning environment, so it was fully online. And eventually I found that these students are actually new to online learning environment. So I took it for granted that because it was pandemic, everybody had to go online, that students were familiar with digital tools. So I was quite wrong with that. So one observation I got was that students were not very familiar with digital tools, and they weren't very familiar with online learning environment as well. So some observation I had when I used email was that again, one thing that I think a lot of us took for granted is we all, as users of emails or Microsoft Outlook, we think and take it for granted that we know how to attach documents, we know how to upload documents, and that was one of the reasons why I thought of using email, because I thought students could finish their work and then they can just attach it and then send it. So it became, I realized it was an issue when I saw my inbox. It was shocking because one, they didn't know how to write emails. So when I looked at my email, I didn't know who sent it. I had no idea what the email was about. There was no subject line. There was no message, even like dear miss or things like that. So it was quite surprising. It came as a surprise to me because I thought everybody knew how to attach. I thought everyone knew how to use email. So apparently not. So that was one of the biggest challenge I found in the first semester. Then I realized I spent a lot of time just explaining how to use email to submit homework. I had to spend time explaining how to save Microsoft Word, how to name the files, and how to attach it in the email and then forward it. So that took me a while, and that took up a lot of time in class as well. And even though I've explained that in class, it didn't work. Yeah, students were still having problems with it. So that was one of the challenge I had, which got me thinking, basically got me thinking how to go about with it. And which got me to think up of an alternative to it, yeah. And the other problem was I got spammed like crazy. So students were spamming because I didn't think about it. I had about 100 students, so I got about 100 emails in a few days' time because everybody had to do their work and then they submitted. So that became a problem because I got spammed and I couldn't keep track basically of which email I've read, which I've marked, which I've not marked. So that also became a huge problem. So couldn't trace, couldn't view which I've checked, and I couldn't trace, I couldn't follow up with that. And it became a challenge for me. And students couldn't see when their work was checked. They couldn't tell whether the email was received. So they got anxious. They got really worked up over it. Yeah. So I get spammed. They would send email, and you get emails in the middle of the night, in the wee hours at 3 o'clock in the morning. So these are all problems that came with homework submission using email. And also there was no transparency. So with the email, the problem was you can't see whether your email is sent out. You can't really see whether when it's sent out, whether it got into the other person's inbox, unless the person respond, unless the person respond to let you know, or maybe you send a read receipt. But even with read receipts, sometimes people don't respond and they don't click and let you know that they've read it. So that was the other limitation or challenge with email and homework submission. So these are some issues that got me a bit stressed out with homework submission, because I was trying to think how else could I do it. Now, the other option I could have gone with was actually Canvas, which we're using. It's a learning management system. But the problem with Canvas is it's very problematic to set up submission that has got no grading to it. And it builds up to the grade book. So it causes, more columns to deal with at the end, which would cause a headache when you're trying to download the marks for spreadsheet purposes. Yeah. So that was one hindsight about Canvas that I didn't want to deal with. So and because of these, that's what got me thinking about Google document. Yeah. So before I go in there, so this is just a screenshot of what the mailbox look like. So one problem here is, if you see there with inbox, you see it's all here. I've actually blanked it out for privacy purposes, but you will see that there will be a lot of incoming messages here, and those that you've checked goes black. Those that you've not checked remains bolded. And it was very challenging because I had to keep tagging it as unread to keep it bold. So it gets a bit overwhelming with that, yeah, because you imagine every time the email comes in, you read it, and then you have to click on unread, and then you go down and you imagine you've got like tens and 20s of or 100 of that. So it became a big issue with that. And some students don't use the student email account. That's the other problem. For some reason, some students' emails go into the junk mail. So it doesn't get sent into the inbox. So it didn't get checked. So those were some problems that I faced with email, and those were quite problematic. Yeah. So therefore, because of those, I went to Google. So why and how does Google help to overcome the problems that I've mentioned? Things like spamming, inbox, missing emails, unable to check and trace. So how does Google document help with that? So with Google document, the thing is, you don't need to attach, you don't need to upload. So you just log in with your Google account, and then the document's right there. So you just have to do it. Yeah, you just have to type in whatever you need. You don't even need to save it because it's on Google Drive, and it's automatically saved. And one good thing about it is, with the Google document, it gets saved, and even if your internet goes off, you can work offline. So that saves a lot of problems, especially with students who claim that they didn't have internet, or the internet has got problems and things like that. So they didn't have to upload. I didn't have to teach them how to attach documents on email. So that saved me a lot of trouble. And it's easy to download. So for those of you who have consultation, or you've got projects, or you want students to share their work with you or to show you their work, like for my case, for our units, we have assignments. So they can work on the Google document, and we can check as they're progressing. And once they're done, they can just download it and then save it and just upload it for submission. So it's very convenient that way, yeah. And there's no need for them to leave messages. So they don't need to learn how to write, "Dear Miss, this is my document. I'm who and who from which group." So that saved a lot of problems, yeah. And also with Google Document, one good thing about it is you can trace and view the homework that has been checked. It tells you when the student's done it. It tells you when the document was saved, last saved. It also shows you what your comments are. So I'll show you a little bit later on a live demo about that, yeah? So you can actually key in and it tells you when it's done, who's done what they have commented, when did they last work on it. So it's very transparent. And that's what I love about Google Document. The students can't run away. They can't tell you, oh, I don't have internet, or I don't see it. Because you can tell, or they can't tell you, oh, I've done it. But when you go in there, you know, it's there. It's just so transparent for both sides. Students can see when you check their work. You can see when they've done their work. So I find it's a good transparent, there's a good transparency with Google Document, yeah? And also, what is good about Google Document is they can see the live feedback. So remember just now I talked about timely and ongoing feedback. So this is something that Google Document can do, and which is good. So when the students can actually see you online, and you can tell they're online, they can tell you online. So when you're giving feedback for their work, and this happened to me sometimes when I'm just giving feedback and the students just so happen to be online and they catch me and then they will ask questions straight then and then. So it became like a two-way thing instead of a one-way feedback. So as you're giving feedback, then they ask you, Miss, what do you mean by this one? Or when you're giving comments, they respond immediately. So you do like a live chat kind of thing. So you can see what they're doing, they can see what you're doing, you can see what they're saying, they can see what you're saying. So sometimes they can even type on the document to chat with you basically and ask. So that's one good thing that I find about Google Document, which I thought was a really good feature that can overcome one of the biggest problems with email. So timing is there, transparency is there, and the ability to trace the homework and the feedback. So I noticed one thing about Google Document. So before I used Google Document, I was spammed and basically harassed by students who were really eager for feedback. So they were really anxious and they're not sure if I've seen their work. They're not sure when the feedback's going to come in. They don't know when I'm going to give them the feedback. So they couldn't tell because they couldn't see. But with Google Document, after I've used Google Document, this problem was overcame. I didn't have students spamming me, asking when they can get the feedback. I also didn't get students, basically harassing me, asking for feedback because they can tell. Once I go in, they can see when I was there. So sometimes with the load, I could be up, let's say late at night at 2 or 3. So some students saw that. And one thing I noticed about this was students commented on this that they thought that it was, they felt relieved basically because they saw that I was working late. So they knew that feedback was going on. They knew, and they could tell then that I wasn't, it's not that I didn't want to check, but I was checking. And I got feedback also that, things like they could see how much I'm working, they could see how hard I'm working. So that was a relief, knowing that students knew that you're actually working and you're not ignoring them. Yeah, like with email, one thing was also they would email and say, oh, you ignore my email, things like that. But Google Documents solve those problems. So it's easy to trace and it's easy to retrieve as well. So I won't have problems with missing documents, right? So it's easy to access. There's no attaching or uploading of documents needed. It's convenient, it's user-friendly, it's private, so you don't have to worry about other students seeing other students' work, which some students find they are quite self-conscious there. They rather not have anybody seeing their work. And also it's easy to monitor student work with Google Document. So some limitations though with Google Document is students can only access it and you can only access it using Gmail account. So for Sweden, for example, we don't use Google, we use Canvas, we use Microsoft. So it became a little bit of a problem there for me, but it's not a huge one. It's just that it takes a little bit more work because I have to create it. And then once I've created it, then I have to share it. And I have to send the emails out through Google Gmail and also the Swinburne webmail. So it was basically double work, but it's only at the start. Once you set it up, then it's okay. Yeah. So, and the other problem is with Google document is that it can be confusing. So if students have more than one document on the Google document, so if let's say it's the same unit, you've got 4 homework, then it can get a little bit confusing and it can get a little bit overwhelming because they can see that and it's going to be all over their Google Drive. So, and also the other thing is it's time consuming to set it up. Like I said, you have to log into Gmail and then you have to create the document. One hindsight is with Google document, you have to create it one by one. So if I have 100 students and I want them to do homework, and each homework, I have to create 100 Google document. This is for individual use. I can create one and get the whole class to work on it. That's fine too. But then there would lack privacy. Yeah. So that's the other hindsight for it. And you need to get Gmail account from the students to be able to add them to the Google document. Otherwise, they don't have access to it or they can't access it. But one good thing is though, it's free. so that's not an issue. Yeah. So this is just again an image of what Google document look like. So if you have a lot of document, as you can see here, it gets listed. So it can be quite difficult to look for if you have more than one. Yeah. So just to end my presentation, so some further research studies that would need to follow up from here would be to obtain students' perspectives on their view, because all these, like I mentioned, is from my perspective as an instructor. So I need to do more research to find out what students' views are and whether they agree or they disagree, whether they have the same view or they have different experience. And also, are there ways to overcome the confusions that could come about with the use of Google Document? And are there any other ways I could or we could utilize Google Document for? And also, is it really effective? The written feedback on Google Document from the students' perspectives. So these are some things that I'm looking to further explore from this study. So that's all I have to share today. Thank you very much for your time. Feel free to post any questions if you have any. I'll try my best to answer if I can. Feel free to share as well if you have experiences.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jenny. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting sharing and observation through the usage of Google Docs as a homework submission and also giving feedback. I think it's always been a challenge for educators, teachers to give feedback through online. Okay. And like what you have mentioned in your sharing, technology tools, there are massive other items, a lot of other items that we know. But I think it's the best what we can actually use to help our students. Most important thing is we are comfortable with it, right? Because sometimes, we always view that technology usually help us, but sometimes technology can be a hassle also. Yeah, so I'm opening to the floor now for any questions. And also for those who join online, if you have any questions, then happy for you to put it in the chat room. So is there any question from the floor? I'll probably just move yes. Can you see it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Ken, if you would like to. Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you for sharing. I'm actually a student, not a teacher, but I just wanted to ask. So you talked about using Google Docs, right? Do you have any intentions on trying out like Microsoft Word online version, because Swinburne is focusing on like OneDrive, for example. So have you ever thought about using like the Microsoft online version?
Sorry,
Maybe
sorry, I can't really hear.
It's fine.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, can you stand here? Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
the mic
okay.
is here, yeah.
I know you. So you had talked about how you use Google Docs for your feedback and assignments and all of that. Do you have any intentions of trying like OneDrive applications like Microsoft Word? I know Microsoft Note even. There are ways of which you can actually get multiple students to like use one cloud-based server. Have you ever thought about using it like that?
Okay. Thank you for that question. In fact, the reason why I turned to Google Document was because with Swinburne, we actually have different domains for students and teachers. So although we share Microsoft Word, although we use Microsoft Teams, and it's got collaboration documents and things like that, the problem is we can't share with our students because of the different domains. So the students use one domain and the lecturers use another domain. So if I were to share, they can't see it and they can't share with me either. So that was one of the problem with uh with 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 Microsoft, and that's why I turned to Google Document instead. Because we don't have a common domain where we can share the documents.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I understand that this is a bit on the technical side. I think one of the question is why don't we use SharePoint? Yeah, the SharePoint. Swinburne is unique in a way that we have different domains being set up among staff and students. That's what we call virtual domain. Okay, so I think it's a way to address any security concerns, because if we do allow students to somehow able to access certain documents in SharePoint, then that will actually trigger some security issues, or security risks. So I think that's the reason why SharePoint, we usually share it among colleagues of Swinburne, let's say having Swinburne's staff, and the students can have their own drive as well. So, but obviously the students want, they can share. I mean, we can actually share specific groups of people, okay, through SharePoint, but I think the setting has to be done like what normal Google Docs has been done as well. Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. But like I said, different university, different colleges, different schools may have a different network settings. And this is very much on the technical side of the settings. But I think as lecturers, we are very adaptable to be able to use different technologies.
That's why we look for alternatives.
Yes. So far no questions from the online chat. So probably just one question here from me. We agree that Google Docs actually is one of the tools to help us to collaborate with each other. What more to say, collaborates with students, So Jenny, did you actually use Google Docs to promote collaboration among your students, like group work? So you have a Google Docs there where students can put in their, their opinions or part of their assignments being done, Google Docs, all this. Then you give feedback straight away on that Google Docs, rather than homework submission, which is individuals. But did you actually use it for collaboration, group work among your students?
Yes, definitely. I use Google Document for my classes actually, where I need them to respond, because with MS Teams, as you can't really see whether they're there or not. But with Google Document, you can see that they're not doing anything, or they're there, or they're not logged into the document. So that's one way to monitor. So I have used it, and it's a great tool as well. And Google Slides as well is a great tool. Recently, I've also explored Google Slides, and I find it really useful because it doesn't cause lagging, not like Jamboard. Jamboard is similar to slides where you get students to comment and put in their typing. But with Google Slides and Google Document, one great thing is it doesn't lag as badly. But there is a limitation to Google Document for collaboration though. It can students can overwrite one another's work. So I had a problem one time was as they were typing, and some students just typed over the other students typing.
I think that is
And
the issue
sometimes
with
students
Google Docs.
accidentally delete the whole document. So everybody went, what happened?
Yeah,
But one great thing is though, you can undo it. And that's what I love about Google Document. You can actually undo the deleting. It allows you to go back to a version that was that was an earlier version. So and it tells you when it was deleted, and it even tells you who deleted what. So
Yeah.
so so that's
I think that is the issue with online collaboration. Yeah. Okay, but I think if there's tracking logs or whatnot, then that will actually help us better to know who is doing what. You know, to keep track. And online trails will always be there. There will no way of how you can delete it. If you know just how to manage the activities online through Google Docs. Yeah. And I think Dr. Eric Curtels, our guest speaker, actually make a comment there to recommend looking for local Google educator group to find out support and help with Google in education. Yes, I think this is happening. I think most of the schools are actually using Google Classrooms, and I think they actually approach. Some of them actually approach the Google educator group. But thank you, Associate Prof. Eric, for recommending that. Yeah, thank you very much. Is there any other questions so far? Yep, okay, so please join me to thank Jenny for her sharing. Thank you. And so yeah, thanks Jenny. So we'll keep in touch. Yeah. Okay, thanks. So now we come to our final presenter. Okay, Dr. Gabriel Wee, who is going to present us a topic on Design Studio in COVID-19, the state of mental health and challenges of online learning among architecture students in Malaysian universities. So it's a very interesting topic where we talk about mental health during the pandemic situation. Yeah. So Gabriel, whenever you are ready, so over to you. 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Juliana. Just to check whether you can hear me clearly and
Yes.
my slides.
Yes.
Okay, great. I can actually hear a little bit of echo on my side. Okay. So allow me to begin my presentation by saying a very good morning, or rather a very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Gabriel. So today I'm representing my research team members, Mervyn Wong from UNIMES, Ray Fang from UTS, and Dr. Lang from UTM to present our study titled Design Studio in COVID-19, the state of mental health and the challenges of online learning among architecture students of Malaysian universities. So according to the Board of Architects Malaysia, there are 5 main clusters under the accreditation manual for architectural programs. Design Studio is actually a core subject in architectural courses or education at the higher learning institutes in Malaysia, as well as other countries, as well. So all the supporting architectural subjects, they are normally organized to provide contributions towards design studio learning, as you can observe from the figure. Amongst the list of subjects offered in the architecture syllabus, Design Studio is a core subject as mentioned, with the most credit hours per week, generally with a minimum of 6 credits hours weekly. And this unit aims to cultivate students' imagination and design thinking to create architectural designs that utilize critical and poetic reflection. In this course, students are trained to work intuitively and pragmatically and are required to express their ideas and creativity through various communication techniques such as drawings, physical models, computer-generated models, digital visualizations, photography, videos, as well as verbal presentation. Architecture education is always an interactive process involving group working and reflective practice to spur the development of future architect skills as well as critical thinking abilities. Typically, design studio as a unit or as a subject is conducted in a physical environment where lecturers can actually demonstrate hands-on skills and conduct critical sessions or critic sessions, all of which require students to participate and collaborate in person. However, the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting need to socially and physically distance have posed an unprecedented challenge for students who take up this particular unit of design studio, as most of the activities are interactive and it requires in-person participation as mentioned. So the shift to online and distance learning brought along its own set of challenges to the students. However, there's no research presented that examines Malaysian students' experience with strictly exclusive e-learning or online learning during the pandemic and during the lockdown. So we are privileged to have two speakers who have presented before me to address the gaps in terms of the technology as well as pedagogical gaps. And today, the primary purpose of this study or our presentation is to address the gaps by examining the prevalence of depression, anxiety, and stress of architectural students in Malaysia where they undergo e-learning during the COVID-19 outbreak. So the depression, anxiety, and stress scales, in short, DAS-21 was applied in this study. The DAS scales has been shown to have high internal consistency and to yield meaningful discrimination in a variety of settings in the assessment of depression level, anxiety level, as well as the stress level. So just a little bit about the design of the study. It is a cross-sectional study involving 96 undergraduate university students. The recruitment was conducted after the COVID-19 confinement measures were implemented in Malaysia, and the participants they were electronically invited to participate in this study via Google Form rather than face-to-face interaction. And the data analysis was performed using Excel 2019 as well as SPSS version 26. And some of the analysis done was the EFA, the descriptive statistics, and lastly, a linear regression to calculate the univariate association between the independent and dependent variables, including gender, age group, year of study, and the stress, anxiety, and depression subscales for all the respondents separately. So allow me to share with you the key findings from this study. First and foremost, we observed the increase of stress level from 23.7% pre-COVID to 28.5%. And studies found that university students are at an increased risk of mental health issues, as evidenced by numerous studies, showing that students routinely report higher mental health issues than the general population. And there's a slew interconnected elements that could be contributing to the surge in mental health challenges among university students, and multiple stressor affects them, including their life stage transitions, academic stress from exam study load, severe pressure to perform academically, housing issues, adjusting to new and geographical context and future concerns. And we see the elevation of stress level when they shift to online learning. And the second finding shows that female students they were found to be more vulnerable to the challenges of online learning. And prior studies indicated that there were actually no significant gender differences, but our study found that female students are more vulnerable to the challenges of online learning. And students between 18 to 21 years old, they are particularly prone to depression, anxiety, and stress. And according to prior research, as comparison, students between 18 to 21, they are in fact prone to mental diseases, with 75% of mental illness manifesting for the first year, especially during their adolescence years. And many students link starting university with their first time away from home, and with more independence, higher pressure, and more responsibility that contributes to depression, anxiety, and stress. And last but not least, we found that year 2 architecture students, they tend to experience higher depression, anxiety, and stress in comparison to the first year and the third year student. And the reason contributing to this is they undertake more design projects than year 1 and year 3 students. And at this stage of their study, they start to experience a more significant learning curve as they transition from fundamental design elements to now a more structural drawings with aesthetics considerations as well. So understanding levels of mental health and associated factors that may contribute to changes can assist the administration, the faculty, the staff in targeting resources and interventions to support architecture students to perform design studio online. So I will keep my presentation short and simple. So that's all for our presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gabriel. Yeah, short and sweet. Yeah, so thank you for sharing with us your research on architecture students during the pandemic, and also looking at the mental health, challenges of online learning and stress level. So, do we actually have any questions on the online? Okay, no. Any question from the floor? Maybe we have a quick one. Yeah, please go ahead. You can shout out if you have.
Like why female students are more vulnerable to the challenges of online, right?
Yeah.
Instead of the male.
Gabriel, can you hear that? Maybe I can repeat that. Is there a reason why, or be curious about why female students are more vulnerable to challenges of online learning?
Maybe Rifa want to answer? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Anyone wants to answer? Rifa?
I think as for now we're actually still going on researching this part because we would have follow-up student orientated forum and so on. But I think generally
Rifa, can I ask a very quick question? How is the gender distribution? How many female and how many male respondents that you have?
there are more females, but the program neutralized the separation of gender.
Okay, so that means the respondents from the 96 respondents that you collected, majority are female.
Yes.
Am I right? Okay, maybe that can actually contribute perhaps to the finding why female are more vulnerable to challenges of online learning. But there are many studies like what Gabriel has shared that there's actually no significant difference between gender in terms of online studying and online learning. But I think, could it be the nature of architecture itself, the subject itself that requires a little bit more focus? And we all know that female students, perhaps they are more multitasking, they are much more, they have to juggle with different tasks at home and also, in the studies and at work, perhaps some of them are working, I'm not too sure. So yeah, that probably can be some of the reasons why female students may face much more challenge during online learning. Yeah, but I think gender distribution can be a factor because you have more female responding to it. Okay. And also, I think it's the nature of how your questionnaires can be addressed as well, because it all depends on your questionnaires when you ask about online learning, challenges. So yeah, those are a few assumptions that we have to make sometimes in our research. So assumptions that we have. But is there anything to add to that question on why female students are much more vulnerable?
Maybe I can add on a lecturer perspective. Actually, I'm the studio coordinator, lah, meaning the studio master for Unimas. So most of the time when we give a task to the students, it requires a very long hour of working over the studio or project. So I think the male actually they are physically they can stay overnight. I mean to pass their project. About the I mean the female when it comes to one or two project maybe they can handle, but when we come to one whole semester of say 14 weeks, imagine that we have to keep rushing and do overtime. When they come up to the end of the sem, they actually physically they actually stretch up. They
Yeah.
feel they cannot handle when it come to school assignment, plus some more there's overtime doing the studio work for a long time of period, 14 weeks. At the end of the sem, actually they are battery low already at the end of the
Yeah.
semester. So that is one of the things that I can observe through my
Okay.
students. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is quite a rational explanation to why female students easily get stressed, and mentally stressed for long term, more on the long term work or homework that they have to do at design studio. Yeah. Okay. Is that answering your question? Partly. Okay. Yeah. I think the research will probably need to find out more because at this moment it's more on quantitative, just collecting data. So to find more about this theme of why gender can be a different in terms of findings, I think qualitative or focus group, can research can actually help to answer some of these questions. Yeah, but it can be future recommendation for your research now. Okay. Any other questions from the floor? Yeah.
For architecture students, what type of platform or software or computer software that we use during this pandemic time?
Yeah. Can you hear that? You want me to repeat? Any software for architecture students? Is there any software or any platform that they are using during pandemic season?
Yes, it depends on which year the student is. For first year, it's fully on manual. First year, they have to do a lot of model making, and then they have to do manual drawings. So one of the issues that when during the pandemic, the teachers only can demonstrate drawings through verbally or some of the drawing pad online. So it's very difficult for them to tell them how do you do the stroke or how do you do the line work, how do you draw the perspective using the pad. That's the one of the criteria or issues facing during first year. While the second year is they're starting to because they need to go into internship. So we are training them to use digital, which means they need to use the software like AutoCAD and the other 3D modeling software called the SketchUp. So that is part where they come in to do a digital assignment. But the problem also we face is that if you teach them, imagine you teach 40 students in a class to use a 3D demonstrate for them. They have to learn, we only maybe have 2 hours, 3 hours of tutorial. After that, they have to learn by themselves at their home. So they'll be watching YouTube to learn, or if it's very hard for them to watch YouTube, they cannot identify what are the mistake, in digital software. Are there any shortcut or not? No one's tell them. But when they come to studio, if they manage to come to studio and then do together, I mean the group work together with their peers, they are able to learn faster, meaning to say they know the shortcuts and then all these formula to generate all these 3D software. So one of the things is that they are slow in learning, especially when they during the pandemic when we implemented all these digital software. It's very new to them, so they are not. Then third year onwards, meaning they are we consider them they are well prepared because second year is a time that we implement all this software and then we like rendering. When you drop 3D, need rendering and Photoshop. All these they have to learn just a short period through the tutorial, through the lecture. Then after that, they have to self-learn. If they are here physically in studio, they can ask around their friends. So these are the setback that we have and we face actually. This is the real thing that we face. Yeah, I hope it answers your question.
that okay? All right. So thank you very much. Any other questions so far? Jenny actually asked a question in on our group chat. What do you reckon is the biggest cause of stress for online learning?
I think it's I think it's communication. It's really communication. The work can be easy, but the people that keep quiet and don't dare to ask on this interpretation of your brief, or they don't understand the thing, they assume, they make a lot of assumption, but at the end, it's not what they expected. And then I think that are the biggest setback. Even among lecturers also have I mean, difficulty in communication during pandemic. We all work from home, so I think the biggest challenge is communication. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree as well that communication has always been a challenge, especially usage of different technology platforms, you know. And
Yeah.
teaching online, especially like 3Ds and AutoCADs and Photoshops, all this, it's not easy. I reckon it's not easy as well. So like what you said, a lot of emphasis are on self-independent learning among students. And I think that's the reason why there's a correlation between mental health, stress, and online learning. Okay, I think not only for architecture students, but I think for all students, you know. So this pandemic is actually an opportunity for us to see whether our students can be independent learner as well. So for university, I think should be okay. But I think for schools, you know, primary schools and secondary school, it can be a huge challenge for lecturers. But I think we teachers are very adaptable. Students are adaptable. We human beings are actually very adaptable. So I think as time goes by, you know, after COVID and post-COVID, I think things go back to normal. But somehow we have experience of online learning from both lecturers, teachers' perspective, and also students. So if we are to switch again to online, I think it should be easier to manage compared to the last 2 years that we have. Yeah. Okay. So if there's no other question, yep. I think that will be the end of our track today on digital technologies. Sorry, let me look at it. Sorry, the team of digital technology in education. So please join me to thank Gabriel and his team.
Thank you.
Mei-Ling, Dr. Len, and also Rifang, right? So, and I hope that the online participants and also the face-to-face participants enjoy all the three sharings from our presenters. And without further ado, I think now we come to a break. And yeah, so I'll see you guys. I hope you guys all enjoy today's conference. And the next track will begin at, the next track will begin at 2 p.m. Yeah, so using the same meeting link. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best, and please take care. Bye online. Let me, bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you, Mary.